In this video, I interview Carrie-Lynn Hotson, who is an HR professional and she has years of experience as a trained interviewer. Now, she has interviewed hundreds of candidates, so she knows what works and what doesn't work. She just has some great tips in this video about how to prepare for a remote job interview. So check it out. Hello, Carrie-Lynn. How are you this morning or afternoon?
I'm doing really well. Thanks, Rowan.
Welcome to the show, and I'm so excited to be talking to you today about how to prepare for a remote job interview. So can you just kick it off by giving us a little bit of information about your background and how are you in this position to be such an authority in this space?
Oh, thanks. Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Rowan, this has taken me a little while. I have 25 years of professional experience.
Wow.
I know, and I'm retiring now from a position as a senior HR manager.
Mhm.
So I have literally been the one writing all these interview packages and asking people questions and doing a lot of these remote interviews. And so now I get to be on the other side and help people prepare before they go in for their interview.
Yeah, wow. Um, and yeah, so let's actually just get straight to the meat of it. Can you share with us some remote job interview tips, and maybe in there, as we discussed off air just a second ago, you have seen moments where you're on the panel, you've seen the interviewer floundering a bit. They're crumbling, they feel the stress, the pressure. Maybe in there you can weave a little bit about what to do in that scenario in particular, because we've all been there at some stage or another. So yeah, if you could share some tips, that would be fantastic.
Well, for sure. I think, even the fact that I'm currently in Canada and you're in Australia just shows how global we're getting. And the workforce is doing the same thing. Remote work is opening up. The opportunities are absolutely fantastic. The reality, though, is now in that environment as a boss, you never actually meet the person in person. I'm not going to work beside you in an office. So remote interviews really have to be kind of the way that I get to know you as a person. And in fact, I'm kind of measuring in that interview how well you communicate with me, orally and in this environment, because this is how you and I are going to meet in our meetings every day. So I think people need to think about that as well. The fact that it's either on meetings or Zoom, a virtual setting, you really have to bring that personality across. Interviewing is a skill. It's a little bit like public speaking, which we know is one of the top fears, right up there with heights and spiders.
Yeah.
So, right. So it's not people's favorite thing to do. And it may be that the job they're applying for is not really an interactive job. It's not one that's going to need a lot of oral communication, but you still have to pass the interview. So I think the place as a job interview coach that I always like to start with clients is understanding whether this is going to be a remote or in-person interview or job. I need you to think of it as a business transaction. And what I mean by that is hats off to anybody in your audience who's ever worked in HR. I had absolutely no idea how tough that job was going to be. As a supervisor, oh, it's so hard. I mean, as a supervisor, you say, oh, we're short an employee, and I don't know, magically HR does their work and you get an employee, but, but it's a lot of work. And we put a lot of effort into that job post. So when your audience sees a job post, pay attention to every single word in there, every qualification, every role, every responsibility. Because the questions are going to be based on it, because it's a business transaction. We are trying to figure out who is our best return on investment. So I'm going to measure you, and you need to prove to me that you can do it. I mentioned, watching people crumble, and it's honestly, it's awful. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I'm a mom, I'm a grandma. I just want to stop and give them a big hug in the middle of the interview. But I can't.
Yeah.
It, you really have to prepare. I tell everybody, interviewing is not the time to practice.
Mm.
You don't practice your answers in the middle of the interview. You don't practice trying to guess what they want you to say. You have to have prepared all of that beforehand.
Mm.
And so the other part of the business transaction that I really want people to think about is we get hundreds and hundreds of applications for jobs,
Yeah.
right? So if you've gotten that phone call, if I've called you and said you have an interview, be proud of yourself. You have done so much work to get that resume and that application to the top of that pile, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah, totally.
you're one of 20 or one of 50 or whatever it is.
Mm.
Now think about how much money you put into that little piece of paper. How much did your education cost you? How many free jobs or low income jobs did you have to take to get the skills and the experience they wanted? The extra training, the co-ops, the internships, the volunteerism, everything you've done, you have invested so much time, so much money, so much effort into creating that resume that got you in front of me. You need to invest the same, not years and years, but a couple of weeks, at least a month of time into prepping for an interview and developing the skills you need.
Yep.
It's critical because I have another saying. I always say that people leave marks on the table for somebody else to grab.
Yeah.
And literally, like, I'm a very visual person. I watch the next candidate walk in and grab up those marks.
Yeah.
And it's not because one candidate necessarily on paper was better than the other. You probably walked in both really close. You had the same skills and experience, same school, but one person understood the interview process. They understood what I was asking in the question. They had studied the job, and so they knew why I was asking it. And then they were able to prove to me they're my best return on investment. They're my ideal candidate.
Mm.
So I think people really, really need to learn the skill. And I promise it's like riding a bike. Once you learn the skill, you'll always have it.
Mm.
One of my most recent clients, I thought it was fascinating. He had 25 years plus of work experience. He had so much work experience. We actually had to work on, like, how do we refine it? Because you could talk for an hour on every question.
Mm.
But he actually told me about, he remembers back in the early 80s, learning interview skills, learning about the importance of a job posting, learning about how he had to research things. And he still uses those skills. But he also knew, I need to be able to bring it across. And so I need to work with a coach, me, to do like a mock interview.
Mm.
And Rowan, it's so much fun. It's so fun because now I get to be the panelist I finally want to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I get to, if you're giving me an answer, Rowan, about, I don't know, teamwork, and you start to go completely off track, I can stop you and say, Rowan, like, I'm lost. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Really?
And right. Audiences, like, clients need to remember that I have never been Rowan. I don't know Rowan's work experience. I've seen it on a piece of paper, but you have to describe it to me. You have to make all the links for me. You have to tell me how what you did in this job is going to relate to my job and why I can believe you can do my job. So you got to give me really good examples. You got to make all the links for me. Don't start using lingo and phrases that I've never heard of because they're your work terms. because then I'm like literally sitting there thinking about the work term and I'm not listening to you because I'm trying to figure out what it was that you said. Right? We're only human and we can get off track too.
Yeah, yeah. Can you dive a little bit deeper? You mentioned a second ago when you were talking to one of your clients or someone you knew, there were research skills, there was something else. Can you just touch on some of the other skills that need building up? Because we've spoken about, yes, we've got to get the skills, but what are the skills? How do we practice them?
Okay, great
Yeah, how do
question.
we hone them?
So I've actually tried to create a bunch of different resources for people to use to actually learn some of these skills, because you're right. It's great to say do it, but then how do I do it? So I created a YouTube channel, and I would love, audience opinion on some different ideas of what they'd like to learn.
In the comments below, any whatever you want to learn or understand better to do with interviewing, please put it in the comments below so Carrie-Lynn can get some ideas, or head over to your YouTube channel, which is called?
It's called Carrie-Lynn Hotson, Job Interview Coach.
Perfect. Okay, I will have a link in to that in the description below. Sorry, I interjected there, please.
Oh, thank you so much. So when it comes to the specific skills, the first one I tell people is research. Exactly what you touched on. You need to understand the job that you are applying for. And one of my key tips is, just because they're the same job title does not mean they're the same job. And the way that people can learn this is literally go on Indeed or Monster or somewhere, search up job postings for jobs that you are interested in and look at them. They're not the same. Because organizations need different things out of the same quote job title. There is nothing worse than starting to quote to me that some of my roles and responsibilities in the job that you're applying for are blank, blank, blank. And we don't have those roles in our job. They're not part of our job.
Ooh.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So that's when, as a panelist, you try to keep a very straight face and don't cringe, right? So, because in fairness too, I want to make sure the candidate understands what they're applying for. Is this a job you're interested in? Is this the job that you thought it was going to be? You don't want to start a job and then find out 6 months later it's not at all what you thought you were going to be doing. So back to when I talked about HR, like, we really do put a lot of work into those job postings. You need to read them. You need to understand what it is. Research the organization, same thing, because every organization slightly different. Then the next piece is getting organized. And you need to, because what people will do is they write out a bunch of stuff. They have all these examples, but they don't know which example to put with which question and to match up to which skill. So you really need to get yourself organized. Because we talked about the person in the interview who like has that panic. The way you're going to prevent yourself from panicking is to be organized and structured going in.
Totally.
Yeah. So on my website, jobinterviewcoach.ca, I created a free PDF because I want people to understand how to organize their material. So literally they just download it. They can use it over and over, make it a bunch of copies. And every job, you're going to list what the job wants. And then I'm showing you how to structure and figure out, what do I put with what?
Perfect. What a great resource.
Because I want people to be successful. I mean, that's why I'm doing this. That's what, it's my passion. I want to help people. I don't want anyone to, fail just because of the interview when they invested so much in their resume, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So once we've researched and we've started to get ourselves organized, we need to figure out, what might they ask? What are the questions going to be? So I have videos I've created on that specifically. And then I've got other material on my website that they can tap into to help them with that.
Yep. Can I just interject there? Could you give us the top 2 or 3 that, often come up, always come up, people always get stuck with?
Well, the one people always get stuck with is, why am I the ideal candidate for this position?
As in, yeah, why are you the ideal candidate? Yeah.
Think of it as a business transaction. Why should I hire you? That's
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah,
asking you.
yeah.
Why you and not the other 10 resumes or 20 resumes?
Yep.
Don't say, well, because I'm great.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, that's great to think that, but you need to tell me why, right?
Yeah.
You're always think you're answering the why. You're answering the how. You're answering me, you're telling me what you've done. That's what I need to know. Honestly, that question is probably my favorite as a panelist, because I hear some amazing little tidbits with that question. That's the one where you have all these examples and you've got everything structured out. If you're well organized, then as you've done the interview, you've thought, okay, check. I told them about my teamwork. Check. I told them about leadership. Check. I told them how I resolve conflict, but I never got in the one about how I got to coach people. Okay. Well, now I'm inserting that one into this question. It's your free for all. Tell me whatever you want.
And that's where that preparation and organization comes into play, because you've got all these things that you want to say if the opportunity arises. And yeah, as you said, if this one wasn't ticked off, straight in.
Right.
Yeah.
Now the other piece with that is it's hard to memorize everything, right? Because most people will walk out of an interview and you just feel like you did a massive brain dump and you can't remember your name, let alone what they asked you. So another thing I work with clients on is learning styles. How do you learn? Because the way you learn is the way you're going to be able to remember and structure all of this information. So it's a lot to go into. I won't go into it right now. They can check it out on my website. But yeah, if you've done the work and you have memorized it in a way that you learn, then absolutely, we're going to hit you with that question and you're going to be able to just sell me on it.
Yep, definitely.
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. We've touched on research, organization.
Yep.
A couple of questions. Is there a next piece to the puzzle?
Oh yeah, one of the most important ones, and that's, how are you going to practice? So for remote job interviews, I want you to practice exactly like this, Rowan. I want you to practice virtually. You can set up a free Zoom account, practice with a friend, invite them to your meeting, make sure your microphone works, make sure your room is quiet. Oh, here's a fun one. Make sure that when you're doing the interview, there aren't people knocking at the door, roommates coming in, kids yelling, "Mom, I need a snack." How tidy is your room?
Yep.
Fair or not fair. I mean, your panelists are supposed to be objective, non-biased. And we do great effort at that. But first impressions count. So have a nice, neat background to your interview. Don't be messing around as the interview starts and you suddenly realize your Wi-Fi is terrible, your webcam doesn't work, because I'll make it work. Like, I've literally done interviews with people in different countries, and we've had to resort to having video, but then having it over a speaker, like me calling them, and we do it the speaker part on the phone, because we just couldn't get the mic to work. I'll make it work, but you feel so rattled as the poor candidate, right? Like, now you're starting off and you're shaky and you're all stressed out, and why do that to yourself? Right? Just practice the way, practice exactly like this, and then practice your answers. A lot of people will write answers out, but if it's a verbal interview, like, unless they're going to let you read your answers, you need to practice them. And that's where my coaching is so much fun, because we practice it and I'm marking them and I'm giving them feedback, and It's a
Absolutely.
lot of
I
fun.
can't imagine a better practice partner than someone like yourself. So,
Mhm.
okay, we've practiced. Is there another piece of the puzzle?
Yep. The last part is feedback. So I specifically made a video on, interview failure. It's not a failure, it's a learning experience. And I want you to rebound.
Mm.
I have met so many people who tell me that they don't want to shoot for the next promotion, or I don't love my job. I'd like to interview for something else, but I did some interviews, they went terrible, and I'm never doing that again.
Yeah, shame.
Right. And that's not the approach I want people to take. So I've literally made you a video to say, here's what I want you to take from it. This is a learning opportunity. What went well? What didn't go well? And let's figure out why.
Mm.
Is it because you didn't do the research? Is it because you weren't structured? Is it because you didn't know what they were going to ask? Is it because, you just sat like this and didn't really give them anything? Right? Like, I mean, what was it? Was it the practicing? Did you freeze? Okay, then we figure out how to practice.
Mm.
And the feedback is really important.
Yeah.
Don't just give up, and please don't email them as soon as the interview finished, and or as soon as you get that you didn't make it. Don't email back angrily. Give yourself 24 hours, and
Yeah.
then you know.
Actually, that's a good question. So we're kind of delving into the post-interview, but when is a good time to get back to them? Say you haven't heard from them. How long do you want to leave it before you get back to them? And as you just touched on there, or the other instances, maybe you have heard back from them. Well, say it's in the negative, if it's in the positive and they're saying, hey, great, want to hear from you again or whatever, then obviously you can email them straight back. Maybe if you didn't receive what you wanted to hear, that could be the other path.
That's a really good question, Rowan. Thanks for bringing that up, because that is definitely something friends, clients are always asking me. So now what? How long do I wait?
Mm.
At the end of the interview, typically there's a question on like, do you have anything to ask us? So that's a good time to ask them, how long are you anticipating? Because if I have 50 people I have to interview, it could very well be 3 or 4 weeks before you hear from us.
Mm.
So if you kind of have that time frame already in your head when you leave, then don't be asking me, a week in. Wait the time frame I've told you.
Mm.
If you want to ask, do it by email. Be polite. Respecting that HR, again, wow, what a job. And as much as we have timelines, things happen, or candidates get sick, we have to rebook things. So sometimes our timelines get stretched.
Sure.
But once you get the email that says, either well, I guess mostly like you didn't get the job, it's fine to reply and say, thank you so much for the opportunity. I think it's really nice when we hear from candidates who say, I'm still really interested in your organization. I really, enjoyed the opportunity, and I will be reapplying. Because then you're thinking, that's nice.
Great tip there, by the way. That's a huge.
But mean it, right? Like I'm watching to see if you reapply, and I'm going to give you another hint in a second. The end part of that is that you can ask for feedback. Some organizations can give it, some can't. I mean, if I interviewed 50 people, I may not be able to. The last part though, on that, if you say you're coming back, then I really want you to learn and improve on the things that didn't go well in the first one. So if there was a question on a specific skill or technique or training that I needed you to have and you didn't know, go and learn it. Because I'm going to notice when you come back. Yeah. I'm going to remember. We have very good memories, and we will remember, oh, this was that person we saw 6 months ago. Wow, good for them. Like they went and got that training. They went and volunteered here. They obviously talked to some people that are doing the job because they've started to understand, what we're doing. Yeah, that's impressive.
Big bonus points there, isn't it? Because it shows that they want to improve, they want to learn, they want to get better, they want to, they're a go-getter.
Well, and remember my return on investment, right?
Mm.
Who's my ideal candidate?
Mhm.
I'm thinking I want a candidate who's displayed that they can do their own self-assessment, they can identify their own weaknesses, they can improve those weaknesses
Yep.
and come back stronger. That's the kind of employee I like, not one that,
Absolutely.
blames everybody else.
Mm. Totally.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. We better round it out there, Carrie-Lynn. But
Sure,
thank
for
you
sure.
so much. I have gained so much from that, and there's some real value in there. So, if people want to find you, they can. The website again. We'll obviously have a link in the description below, and might even have it on the screen here now. But it's had it up a second ago. Do you want to?
It's jobinterviewcoach.ca.
Yep.
And
Wonderful.
you can find me through my hashtag too. Hashtag Carrie-Lynn Hotson, all one word. That one's an easy one, and you can find everything that way.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Carrie-Lynn. And yeah, we'll talk again soon.
sounds good. Thanks, Rowan. Bye.
I hope you got something out of that interview. If you're not already a subscriber, feel free to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video. Have a great day. Goodbye.